today. The paragraph that we're focusing on this year, as a Jewish custom, learn a chapter every year from the discourse, I've come to my garden. The chapter we're learning this year is chapter 13. So we're going to try to learn it inside, and hopefully not just inside the paper, but hopefully it comes inside us. Let's go. The infinite light of Hashem extends below without any limit. What this is referring to, this statement of the Tikkun is there, that the infinite light of Hashem goes down below without any limit, that's referring to the revelation of Hashem's light, and it's referring to the way Hashem's light is mispashet. Mispashet means the way it extends, the way it spreads, and gilui means the way it's revealed. What's the difference between the way it's revealed and the way it spreads? To have a excellent teacher who was able to bring an idea down through many parables down to the level of the student. So he's brilliant. And there is the way the student absorbs that same information. You could be talking about the brilliance of the teacher, or you could be talking about the majesty of the student. There's a teaching from the Ralbag. Ralbag said, "Ha'em is nikar mikol tzad." Truth is recognizable from any angle. The Rebbe derives so much meaning out of this statement that Rabbi once expressed himself at a farbrengen. I don't think he was serious, but he said, I could swear to you, he didn't mean all this. There's so much info that the Ralbag couldn't possibly have had all that in mind. But anyways, it's that even if you all meant it, it's still, it says about many Gedolim, so many tzaddikim, that they looked in their own svarim and they discovered greater insights than your they themselves knew when they wrote it. Right. Like everyone said about the Rambam, that the Rambam himself in Gan Eden doesn't always understand his own Rambam. So he goes to Moshe Levin to ask him to explain the Rambam. And Moshe Levin also doesn't always know the meaning of the Rambam. So Moshe Levin and the Rambam go together to the Eibishter to ask him to explain to them the Rambam. Anyways, but what does it mean? The truth is recognized from every angle. Rabbi gave the following analogy. He said, chassidus is truth. So chassidus, it's learned also not just in yeshivas. Chassidus is also studied in university. But you could say the reason why chassidus is studied in university and colleges is because chassidus is infinite and it reaches universities. But then there's something else. Not just that the infinite light of chassidus reaches university. There is the way the university looks at itself. University wants itself to be prestigious. How does university become prestigious? It has all the important subjects. So university, a self-respecting university, can't be self-respecting without chassidus. In other words, the university in its own parameters, looking at itself as how university is meant to be, has to also have chassidus. It's not just because chassidus is infinite. Truth is recognized from every angle means that even from the perspective of the university, it has to have chassidus. Not because the light is infinite, but because the world demands it. The world on its own has a connection to it, because truth is recognized from every angle, even from the angle of the recipient. So in a similar way, when we say that Hashem's light extends infinitely everywhere, we're not just talking about the greatness of Hashem's infinite light. We're talking also about how the way Hashem's infinite light is received in every place. Not just that the teacher is able to bring the information down to the level of the student, but more the way the student absorbs information. That the infinite light of Hashem, not only does it extend everywhere, but it's revealed. It's something that which because it's truth, it's also received from the world itself. So we're going to get more into that. What that means. What is when we discuss how low we're going to go, we'll see how incredible that statement is. Hashem's infinite light. Not only is it extending to every single part of the higher worlds, but also extending to the lowest levels of the clip of evil itself. And even in that place of evil, it's also an expression of Hashem's infinite life, as we shall see. Okay. Hashem's infinite light spreads, extends infinitely, without any limit, literally to the lowest of places. In the last and lowest of levels. And that's the meaning of the Tikkun HaZohar statement. That the infinite light of God extends below without any limit. The light spreads without any limit at all. In the lowest of levels, the infinite light of Hashem reaches that lowest level as well. And the infinite light of Hashem, in other words, not only produces and creates the lowest kinds of reality, but even the lowest forms of reality, there is a expression of Hashem's infinite light. Not just that you could say He creates it, but He's something other than that. He's not, you don't see Him in it. But He says more, that there is expression of Hashem's infinite light in the lowest forms of existence. So in order to get to the lowest forms of existence and to see how they also have an expression of God's infinite light, we're going to go through the echelons of the spiritual cosmos, from the highest of levels to the lowest. And we're going to start from Ilum Ein Sof. Dehine Ilum Ein Sof Shalfnei Atzimtzum. Ve'ilum Atzilus Hashem Meir Erin Seit B'Gali. Before the Tzimtzum, before Hashem, I don't want to say the word withdrew His light, because chassidus says that Hashem doesn't, the light of Hashem hasn't left, but before Hashem concealed His light, there were, before the Tzimtzum, there is infinite worlds, and in these infinite worlds, the infinite light of Hashem expresses itself. There is an expression of the infinite light of Hashem in the creation of the infinite worlds that exist prior to Hashem's hiding or not literal withdrawing of His light. So the fact that Hashem's light expresses itself in the creation of an infinite amount of worlds is not surprising. It's not a novel thing, because of course that those worlds before the Tzimtzum are a vessel for Hashem's infinite light. It's not surprising that His light extends there. Rabbi was once discussing the levels that we discovered, that we talk about before the Tzimtzum. It says that the Tzimtzum, the withdrawal, again, or the hiding of Hashem's light, the initial Tzimtzum, it's called the Tzimtzum Rishon, the first Tzimtzum, isn't the first Tzimtzum. Although we call it...
When did that happen?
When did it happen? There's another discussion about all different levels of the spiritual cosmos. How often are they renewed?
Right.
And there Cashapp is a series of discourses in Shua Samachay discussing how it takes a renewal, not just to create the physical world, but even every single step of the spiritual cosmos requires a constant renewal for them to be. But let's go for a second back to the before the Tzimtzum. Before the Tzimtzum, a level, in other words, higher than the Tzimtzum, there must be Tzimtzum in there as well. How do there Tzimtzum in there as well? Because there are different levels before. Not only the different levels, but the very fact we're talking about the light of Hashem, not the essence of Hashem, that itself tells that there was a Tzimtzum. There's the way Hashem is, and the way Hashem expresses Himself. So the very fact we're talking about levels of something, that means there must have been Tzimtzum in before. And yet we call one Tzimtzum the first Tzimtzum. Why are we calling it the first Tzimtzum? So we give the analogy of a child. When a child cries. Sometimes a child cries because he wants an ice cream. Sometimes a child cries because he wants to get closer, he wants to have his turn to use the computer. Sometimes a child cries because he wants your attention. But when a child cries, he doesn't differentiate between how great the need is. Whatever it is, he's crying. How come I can't get that? So in a similar way, before the Tzimtzum, the pervading reality was Einu Mavadeh. There's nothing at all other than Hashem. Nothing at all. So although there's different levels in that truth itself, but ultimately it's all called the same reality. It's called prior to the tzimtzum, and we don't call those levels tzimtzumim, even though they are tzimtzumim. They are different degrees of revelation of godliness, but it's possible to classify all of that as just one kind of reality, because this entire reality is like the child. It's equal. It doesn't matter if it's the ice cream or if it's the computer. I want. So too, the reality before the tzimtzum is einem levad. So too, regarding the infinite amount of worlds before the tzimtzum, infinite amount of worlds. You think, wow, we only visited X amount of cities in this world. There must be so much things going on in those infinite worlds. The infinite amount of worlds in tzimtzum, there aren't there's not much. There aren't so many differences between one world and the next, because all of them are just a expression of Hashem's infinity, and there's nothing besides Hashem. That's the what those worlds are. And there's no real distinction between them, no important distinction between them. They're all just expressions of how there's nothing besides Hashem in infinite amount of ways. The world of Atzilus also. The world of Atzilus is already post Tzimtzum. It's already after Hashem has hidden His infinite light, and now there are 10 spheres in the world of Atzilus. There's 10 and not 9, 10 and not 11. There's a clear number over there. It's not infinite. And yet, that also isn't so surprising that the infinite light of Hashem is revealed there and extends there as well. They are vessels to Hashem's infinite light. How come they're vessels to Hashem's infinite light? The kelim, the vessels of Atzilus, are different to the vessels of the world's beneath Atzilus. The vessels of Atzilus are literally godly. What does that mean? We discussed a couple of times the difference between the four worlds. And that was an analogy. You have the way the king is in his chambers. All there is the king. You have the way the king is in his throne room, where there's a throne room of people looking at the king, but they're all absorbed by the king's presence. Those are respectively the difference between the world of Atzilus and the world of Bria. And then there are people who have been in the throne room and left the throne room. That's the world of Yetzirah. And then there is this world, people at the end of the kingdom who have barely even heard about the king. So that's the general feeling in these four worlds. But beyond the general feeling, it's a lot more. There's a lot more to say about these four worlds than just this simple part. It just tells us the general feeling of these four worlds. Chassidus says that this world itself, for example, is there's a difference in this world before the sin of the tree of knowledge and after the sin of the tree of knowledge. Before the sin of the tree of knowledge, yes, this is like the country that's barely heard about the king, or the end of the country has barely heard about the king. But in that itself, there's different levels. There are people who have heard about the king and know who the king is, and people who know more about the king. This gives classifies this world before the sin of the tree of knowledge as a parable for godliness. What's a parable? A parable is something which is totally foreign to the idea. The idea is about two apples. The idea is 2 and 2 is 4, and the parable is about 2 apples and 2 apples are 4 apples. Using something which is completely foreign to the concept. There's the concept, then there's the way the concept is used in the parable. But still, the parable is made for the concept. When you hear 2 apples and 2 apples are 4 apples, there's nothing else that the parable is about other than the idea trying to convey. Then there's something else. There's a riddle. A riddle, when you hear a riddle, you don't know where the riddle is going. You don't know that this riddle is about the analog that's trying to give you something. You hear a riddle, you're confused. When you hear a parable, the parable fits directly to the analog. When you hear a riddle, you have to figure out what's this riddle for. So after the sin of the tree of knowledge, instead of the world being just like a parable for godliness, where yes, it's something foreign to godliness, something which is incomparably lower to the spiritual godly energy that it is meant to be a parable for, you don't see the godly energy, just like you don't see electricity, you don't see gravity, you don't see the godly energy in the world. It's a parable for godliness. There's something in the world that is the expression of godliness, but it's something foreign to godliness. That's before the sin of the tree of knowledge. For example, it says the sun is a parable for Hashem's infinite light of Yud Kei Vav Kei. So before the sin of tree of knowledge, look at the sun and say, oh, that's a parable for godliness. That's about Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's not. It's like the way we look at gravity. We don't see the gravity, but we know this is because of gravity. We don't see electricity. We know this is because of electricity. Before the sin of the tree of knowledge, you looked at the sun. Said, oh, this is about godliness. This is about Yud Kei Vav Kei. This is a covering. That's about Elokim Elokim. It was all clear. After the sin of the tree of knowledge, the world became more of a riddle for godliness. That you have to wow, what is going on over here? What is this about? And you have to figure out that this has this is not the way it seems. There's something else going on over here. There's divine providence. This is Hashem's hand, and it's a riddle. It's not as obvious. But again, we're dealing with a total foreign entity, and you're saying this foreign entity is about something godly. Figuring out the riddle. Then there are higher and closer things to the concept itself. There's a concept, the way the concept is in the parable or the riddle. Then there is the way the concept is, let's say, an idea, the way an idea affects your feelings. The way an idea affects your feelings is that something foreign to the concept? You think that OJ is guilty, and therefore you're upset at how dare he do this dastardly deed of murder. So your feelings of anger, your feelings are part and parcel of the ideas that motivated those ideas, of the ideas that motivate those feelings. Then you go over to your friend and you tell him what you've discovered, and you're expressing the same idea, and then you do something about this. Then you write an email, you make a Facebook post, you do something about it. So there's a concept itself. Then there's the way the concept affects your feelings. There's the way the concept not only affects your feelings, it affects your thoughts. I'm sorry, affects. Okay, there's a way the concept affects your feelings. The word thoughts, chassidus, when he uses the word thought or machshava, it's not talking about intellect. There is intellect and there's thought. Intellect is the idea itself. Thought are the letters that convey the intellect. So in 2 plus 2 is 4, you could say 2 plus 2 is 5 too. You could write 2 plus 2 is 5. You couldn't even think 2 plus 2 is 5. You can't understand that 2 plus 2 is 5. Because 2 plus 2 isn't 5, 2 plus 2 is 4. So there is the idea itself. There's the way the idea affects your feelings. And it's the way that affects the letters of thought, the things you think about, the actual words in your mind. The way it affects the way you speak, the way it affects the way you act, and the way that it further can be conveyed, the same idea, through a parable and through a riddle. So in the world of Yitzira and Asiya, that's the way the concept. If we would exchange the word concept, the concept we're talking about is godliness, Hashem's truth. So the way Hashem's truth is perceived and understood in Atzilus, and the way it resonates through the midas of Atzilus, just like the concept resonates through our feelings. Then there's the way the concept is further carried over and expressed as something to our thoughts and our words and our actions. So to the way that godliness is expressed in the world beneath Atzilus, in Bria Siyasiya. And just like in ourselves, our thoughts and words and actions they're not like a parable, where the parable is literally something foreign to the concept. Our thoughts and our words about the concept are still about the concept, but still our thoughts and our words and our actions about the concept aren't the concept itself. They're expressions of the concept. It's not the concept itself. It's the way the concept is conveyed to our conscious self. Our thoughts are, chassidus says that the purpose of our thoughts is to convey to our conscious self what's going on higher than our conscious self. In other words, our thoughts are always receiving from the soul itself. The soul itself thinks and feels, intellect and emotions, and our letters of thought convey to us what's going on in our soul. Our conscious thoughts are usually, what do we think about? I know how Melech, his source, he once said The Mashpi and Marston used to say that you want to know what you're into? What's the first thought that goes in your mind when you go in the street? That's what you're into. Okay, so that's your thought. Your thoughts, but again, they're conveying the same idea to something, to you, to your conscious self. Then your speech conveys the same concept to someone else. Then there is a way you act upon this. So the same concept is affecting something other than the concept itself, and it's conveyed into there could be a parable about it, there could be a riddle about it, but it's the concept as it's going into some foreign reality. So in the fact that Hashem's infinite light extends and is expressed in the worlds higher than Atzilus, okay, that we can understand. That makes sense. The fact that it's expressed also in the world of Atzilus. What's the world of Atzilus? In this analogy, Atzilus is the intellect and emotions that are receiving this concept. The intellect and emotions are about the concept itself. It's the concept itself as it's affecting your objective and subjective reality, how you feel about the concept. It's still the concept itself as it is in you. How do you feel about it? How do you understand it? It's your understanding and your feeling about this concept. But if you were to strip the concept from the intellectual ways of expression, and you go to, let's say, you could see the concept. It's like you could see in the analogy, lahavdil of the court case, if you could see the event itself instead of it being something that you understood based on the evidence. So that's before there's any intellect or any feelings about a concept. That's the truth itself. That's above Atzilus. That's the godly core without there being any ways to channel and to express it. So the fact that there is an expression of Hashem's infinite light in the worlds above Atzilus isn't surprising. The fact that Hashem's infinite light is also fully expressed and reaches the world of Atzilus, which again, the world of Atzilus is the intellect and emotions. The fact that the concept is understood, the fact that the concept it affects the way you feel. That's still the concept itself. It's a concept itself as it is in your subjective reality, as it is in you. But then there is the way the concept is being expressed outside of you to something else. That's the world's beneath Atzilus. But even beneath Atzilus itself, there's this distinction. Letters of thought, for example, are only about the soul. They have nothing else to do. It's possible to speak and to stop speaking. It's possible to act and stop acting. It's not possible to stop thinking, because the garment of thought is attached to the soul. So although it's foreign to the soul, it's not the soul itself. It's the way the soul expresses itself to the conscious self. It's still something which is a garment. It's an expression. It's like our clothing expresses ourselves to the outside world. We use our clothing to relate to the outside world. But unlike speech and action, thought is completely attached to its to the soul. Okay, it's time for that, but let's just summarize where we're up to over here. The Rebbe says that the infinite light of Hashem it extends and is revealed in lower and lower without any end. That says in the Zohar. So the Rebbe says the fact that the infinite light of Hashem is expressed and revealed before the Tzimtzum isn't surprising. The fact that it's expressed also in the world of Atzilus, which gave the analogy of the intellect and emotions, is also not surprising. But the infinite light of Hashem also expresses itself in the worlds beneath Atzilus, where there's something foreign to the infinite light of Hashem. There, it's not only about the concept anymore. Now it's about the way the concept is received outside of itself. Not the way the concept is motivating the way the concept is now extending outside of itself. And in the analogy, the way the infinite light of Hashem extends to something which is foreign to it. And it's called clothing. not the concept itself. The world of Atzilus is compared to the body, to the soul. It's attached to the soul. The body itself is alive. It's not that the soul has to kick the body and say, go. The body itself is alive. So the world of Atzilus, it being a vessel for godliness, isn't something that's novel. However, the fact that the infinite light of Hashem, it reaches and is expressed in the worlds beneath Atzilus, that's something novel. And that is the expression of Hashem's infinity, that it descends lower and lower without any limit. And we'll see, not just in the worlds beneath Atzilus, but tomorrow we'll see how this goes also to different levels of reality within the worlds beneath Atzilus, in the lowest and lowest of levels. Okay, do we continue?
Yeah, this is the paradox of how something good could create something evil for good